I think what we need to get into here is the Nebraska-Iowa rivalry, okay? Now, this is the reason why we originally thought about it. We're sort of breaking this down. We're going to kind of get to this well in advance. To me, there was a game that was played this Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, in college basketball, and it had a very surprising outcome to it. For those that don't know, I am a Georgia fan. Chris is a huge Nebraska fan. I decided to kind of help take an opposite view here, and I'm going to represent the Hawkeyes in this spirited debate between the two schools. And so, yeah, I'm going to be taking care of the Iowa fans out there. And so, yeah, let's go Hawks.
Bro, there's not much to say about the Hawks nor this rivalry. I'm jumping into it right here, bro. Here's the thing. What's this rivalry probably mean to me, or what does it mean to me? I think, Nebraska, joined the Big Ten, I think it was 2011. I am a big advocate of the old school days of the Big 12, Colorado, Oklahoma, K-State, Iowa State. That's what I grew up with, right? And when we did, decide to jump to the Big Ten, Iowa was kind of our thing, right? They're right down the street basically from us. I at first I really didn't, know how, it was almost like the narrative was they were trying to push this rivalry on both the schools, right? Because we're new into the Big Ten. We were pretty dominant in the Big 12 for a lot of years, especially in the 80s and the 90s, right? So we get over here. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was a little kind of pissed off and upset, but over time, and we've kind of gotten our asses kicked in that rivalry. I believe Iowa leads that rivalry right now 8-4. I believe lifetime rivalry back. I think this thing started back in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think we're still ahead. I think it's 30-20 and maybe 3 or some shit like that. But personally, relevancy nowadays, it's a big deal. Last year, coming in, I think we had lost 7 straight to Iowa, which I'm not going to lie, hurt my ego a lot. I got a lot of friends that are Iowa fans. Last year, though, I think for Nebraska was a big one, right? I mean, that was Mickey Joseph's last game. He had taken a team from Scott that was a dumpster fire at the time internally, and I could get into that. But that last win last year against Iowa, man, was to me, and it's going to sound ridiculous because we haven't been that relevant on a national stage. We haven't won that many games in the last 4 or 5 years. But that last game was kind of like our bowl game last year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we knocked them out of the Big Ten title game with that and put Purdue in. So that was huge as a person in this rivalry who's a big-time Nebraska fan. I believe they call it the Heroes Trophy. I think that's what they're playing for. I know it was a big deal. There was a lot of drama after that game. The television didn't show it, but I know people that played in it. It was kind of a big deal. Iowa fans were pretty pissed off. We came in there. We're not that great a team. Iowa, I know last year, even though a lot of people are going to talk about how shitty their offense was, which, it was pretty fucking shitty. Their defense kept them in the game. I mean, any game of the year. I mean, they played a lot of people tough. Their defense is out there on the field 90% of the time. So, it's a big rivalry now. I think it's going to get only bigger with Matt Rule being in here. Ferentz, I don't know how much time he has left, but they're going to be better this year with Cade McNamara at quarterback, without a doubt. And Iowa puts out tight ends, offensive linemen. Their defense is always fucking solid, one of the tops in the Big Ten. So this rivalry is only going to get better. I can say that as a true Nebraska fan, but I will kick it to this asshat here that's got the Iowa gear on. What do you got, man?
As a true Iowa fan for the better part of the last 24 to 48 hours, let's just call it here, I can just go ahead and say that you're wrong. Listen, I think, no, man, that's awesome. I can't give you shit. Look, and we've talked about this a lot. Chris put his heart out there, and I like it. It's one of those situations where you grow up a Nebraska fan. I mean, you got to rep your team. You got to claim them, right? Again, I think the big statistics that you got to look at for this game is overall the game was started in 1891. Okay. That's when this thing started, but they've only played it 50 times.
Yep.
So, I mean, well, it's not 50 times. It's actually 53 times to be exact. And you got it exactly right. Nebraska leads the current rivalry 30 wins, 20 losses, and 3 ties. Again, what the fuck is that? This is America. We shouldn't be tying in anything, right?
100%.
If baseball doesn't have ties, neither should college football, okay?
Agreed.
All right. Now, Nebraska, interestingly enough, they own the longest winning streak at 8, and that was from 31 to 41, so a 10-year period there. And then they also have the largest margin of victory, 57-0. That's got to feel good.
Yeah, no, it does. I think those probably came way back in the day, though. I'd be curious about that last stat you just brought up there, since you're a stat whore, 50 whatever to nothing. I do know that 8-game win streak. I was not around, even though I am a geriatric fuck, as you call me. I was not around for that time, Christian.
No, it is God only knows. I was going to say, like 1891. You said you graduated high school back in 91, bro. I'm a little curious now as to what generation you meant there. And it's okay. I mean, you don't have to be spot on with it. Look, let's look at this. This is something else, and I'll kind of, on the backdrop of that, I'll look up what year that was just in case for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's the reality situation. Nebraska did win last year, 24-17. The seasons were completely different for each other. And I like it because as bad as Nebraska's offense was last year, as bad as Iowa's offense was last year, Nebraska's defense was equally as terrible. So it was a good matchup through and through, if you ask me. I think the other side of this is coming into that game, Nebraska was 4-7, if I'm not mistaken, and Iowa was sitting at like 8-4, somewhere in there, 8-5. I mean, they ended up the season 4-8. Iowa was 8-5. So it's so funny how just in that one rivalry game, even though the season was completely, I mean, literally flipped on its head, flipped on the axis there for both these schools, you guys beat them, and it was like winning not a national championship, but I mean, it was damn near like winning the Big Ten to you guys. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it was. And anybody that's watching this is a Nebraska fan, I think a lot of people felt that way. Like I said, I know a couple people that were in that game. I've talked to them recently about it. The feelings, the emotion with the whole fucking roller coaster that was Nebraska, especially last year, but the last 4 fucking years at least, you know, we lost a shit ton of close games. Anybody that's followed us the last how many years, heartbreakers to Michigan and Ohio State and all these teams, Wisconsin, I can name them all. You know, we always found a way to fucking lose, right? So like last year, winning that game and proving that we could win a goddamn game. It doesn't sound like much for a team that had 3 or 4 wins coming into that game, but just the history and everything with Nebraska lately, man, it was a big stepping stone to see us solidify that, man, we can win a football game. It was good for the kids. It was goddamn great for the kids coming back and the program, you know, looking forward, taking that next step. I mean, we are at, I don't want to say the bottom, but we are goddamn down there. And that win was huge. Yes, it's against a rival. You know, for me, it felt great. I was happy you end the season on a high note. Yeah, we weren't in a bowl game. I know that. But just if anybody, like I said, this fall in Nebraska knows this, that was big for the kids. They deserved it with Mickey, the job that he did here. It felt great, man. So yeah, you're exactly right, Christian. It was huge. And like I said, coming into, you know, this season, I think we can build on that and establish something and keep going forward with this thing, man. Like I said, it isn't a rivalry until both teams are winning, right? I mean, we all know Michigan and Ohio State's the biggest college football rivalry out there, right? You could go to basketball, Duke and North Carolina, and they're almost like split even, which is crazy after 100 and some odd years. We had lost, I believe, 7 straight coming into last year to Iowa, man. I mean, I was getting to a point where I was just like, I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Iowa's been good, but Iowa isn't competing for national titles either. So, like, we need to make this a game. And last year, it was a damn good game if anybody watched it, but big win for us, big win for the program more than anything, and big win for the kids to give them the confidence coming into this year.
Yeah, 100%. By the way, that margin of victory, 1980, I'm sure you were alive back then.
Yeah, just a sparkle in my dad's eye, a twinkle, if you will.
Okay, let's be honest. You were probably becoming a father at that point. I mean, let's not fucking joke here, man. You already had a full-grown son at that point.
I'll say it again,
so,
man. Cock on this guy. Here we are.
Yeah, I can't wait to get that on a shirt. Anyways, here's the other side of it. And as Chris kind of alluded to, the rivalry has kind of been, in recent years, has been more one-sided. Iowa's gotten the last 7 out of the last 8. Yeah, I mean, it felt like this is sort of a changing of the guard. And that's something I want to save a lot of the ammunition for a little later on when we start making the cases for it. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting, I think, Chris, to kind of see just how quickly things in this sport can change and drop on its dime. You know, you had thrown out Ohio State and Michigan is one of the greatest rivalries in college football. To me, I grew up an SEC guy. I'm a Georgia fan at heart. I think, to me, even growing up down there, I think one of the better rivalries, that if I had to say, hey, who's got a good rivalry game that's competitive each and every year that actually means something, man, I like Alabama and Auburn. I think
I was just going to say that for you.
That game is it seems like even in years where Auburn or Alabama, you know, they're sort of out of it. They could both have like 4 or 5 losses. One could have 4 or 5 losses, and the other one could be undefeated, get ready to lock up a national championship, and just like they stick a dagger in their heart, man. I mean, it's crazy to me. That rivalry is just insane. So
yeah, no, I will piggyback off of that. It was funny, before you even said that, I was thinking, like, if I was an SEC fan, right, and I hated Bama or hated Auburn or vice versa, or any of those teams, or was rooting for any of those teams, man, like, what's their biggest one? It is the Bama Auburn. You hear a lot of celebrities, you know, ex-NFL, NBA players talk about that. You know what I mean? They talk about that rivalry if they're from down there and even across the country. So, yeah, I would throw that out there. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Like I said, I've always been, you know, in the Midwest here, you know, and it is Michigan and Ohio State have always been huge, right? You know, the Big 12 is where I predominantly came from. So, like, that was, as a Nebraska fan, it's Nebraska, Oklahoma, right? And that happened a lot in the 80s, 90s, you know, early 90s. Oklahoma wasn't really that relevant, but, like, you know, that's built on. We had some great games in the early 2000s too, you know, with them. So, yeah, I'm not going to say that one rivalry is maybe necessarily better than the other, but you know what I mean? Everybody does talk about that Ohio State Michigan game every fucking year, just because of the title hopes on the line, it seems like, going into that game. And as I said in my previous episode, if you guys haven't checked that out, I did mention, I think both teams this year, I'm gonna lay my sack out on the table here, that both teams are going to be undefeated going into that one.
hey, man,
Somebody else feels differently about it, though.
I do. And I do feel differently about it. I know, and I've caught some shit about it. I mean, all I simply said was, comparatively, okay, on defense, the talent's a lot different. I mean, you can make the argument that Michigan has the better defense. I don't even think that's that bold of a statement. I just think from a name standpoint, from a star rating standpoint, that's not everything in this sport. But I certainly think you could make that argument that Michigan doesn't have, you know, the same name and stars on defense that Ohio State has. Now, what that translates to on the field, completely different. Okay. And that's something else that we're going to talk about in this rivalry. I think, to kind of go back and to piggyback off what you had said there, Chris, I mean, we'll have to do another show, a completely different show. This gave me a great idea where we sit down and we look at the greatest rivalries in college football. So we'll definitely take a look at that.